It was a dark and gloomy night when Ella was walking to her car after getting off from work. This 22-year-old works at the hospital as a nurse, and she really enjoys it. As she approaches her car, there is a note that says, "Watch your back." She immediately looked around to see if anyone was there. Panic set in, and her thoughts started racing in her mind. Who could this be from? What could this mean, thought Ella. She hurried into her car, locking all the doors. Then she called her sister Haley, who is a police officer. She told her sister what she had just discovered and how frightened she was. Her sister brushed it off and said it was nothing. So Ella drove home, still worried about the note. She lives only with her 2 cats and her loud thoughts. The next day, early in the morning, Ella went to work with a clouded headspace, hopeful for a better day than the last. The day was normal. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. It was average until something strange happened. While Ella was on her lunch break, she noticed a note in her cubby that stated, "I know where you live." That one line sent chills down her spine and made her lose her breath. How could someone know where she lives? What could they want to do? She was scared to leave work, so she stayed as long as possible there where she was safe. She confided in her coworker about what has been happening with the strange and eerie notes. Her coworker consoled her and said she shouldn't stay at her house alone for a few days. So Ella called Haley, pleading if she could spend a few nights at her house due to fear of what could happen. Haley agreed, so when Ella got off from work, she went to her sister's house. Ella was relieved and felt safer not being alone. The 2 sisters talked about what they would do if the creepy stalker kept occurring. Haley said nonchalantly to her, "This is probably nothing, just some random guy being weird." Ella was hurt that her sister wasn't taking this seriously because she felt very uneasy about it. She told Haley fearfully, "I'm worried something awful will happen." Haley didn't want to scare her, so she played it off like no big deal. Later that night, almost dusk, there was a quick knock at the front door. They were hesitant to open it due to it being so late. Ella peeked through the window curtains to see the front porch, but there was no one there. They thought this was odd, but just thought the person left because they didn't answer in time. Ella went to sit back down on the couch to enjoy their show. Then they heard a loud knock at the back door, which was very strange because they have a fenced yard. Ella was afraid to go to the door alone, so they both went. Again, there was no one there, so Haley went outside with a gun for protection and told Ella to stay inside. Ella was terrified about what or who could be out there. After a minute, she wondered what Haley was doing. Ella went hesitantly outside, and she saw Haley looking all around the house. Just when she thought she searched everywhere, she saw the gate close. They both rushed towards the gate, opened it, and saw a person running down the alley. As Ella and Haley chased the stalker down the alley, Haley yelled, "Stop! This is the police!" When the person kept running, Haley pulled out a gun and shot them square in the back of the head. They fell down face first into the cold, hard concrete. The gunshot echoed in Ella's ears for the next minute. They both went over to the still body to confirm they were dead. It was a man that looked about in his mid-30s with brown hair. His pulse was gone, and his body is lifeless. Ella had just witnessed a murder by her own sister. Ella started crying and to her sister, shocked at what had just happened, but she knew it was for the best. Haley said to her, "You're safe now," as they hugged each other tightly. Now that there is a dead man, what do they do with him? They discussed back and forth about plans on what to do. They eventually decided to hide the body deep in the forest underground. They put the man's cold body in a big trash bag in her sister's dark blue truck, along with a shovel. They drove a little outside of town and dragged the body into the overgrown forest while Ella carried the shovel. They decided that the perfect spot to bury the deceased man is near an enormous tree next to a cave. Ella dug out about 6 feet deep in the ground as she's thinking, this did not have to happen. They both tossed the body into the homemade grave like a bag of trash. They covered the hole with dirt and leaves. As they drove home, the silence was deafening in the car. There were no words spoken, just thoughts spiraling. Haley told Ella to stay at her house for the night so she wouldn't be alone. Ella agreed, and they spent the night with each other's company. Ella worked up the courage to start a conversation. "I'm hungry. What's for dinner?" Haley started making pizza that smelled so delicious it filled the house. They both ate, then went to bed without discussing what happened earlier that day. Now that the threat is out of her life, Ella thought she can live freely, with no worries. The following morning was the weekend. They were watching TV when the news came on. The news anchor was talking about a missing man named James Brown, who has light brown hair, brown eyes, 6 feet tall, and last wearing a blue plaid shirt with jeans. The women were shocked and speechless with surprise. They couldn't believe that the man they killed and hid was on the news as missing. Now people are going to go looking for him and might find out that they caused his death. They were fearful that their secret would get discovered. Since Haley is a police officer, that would be devastating for her image in the community. Ella is a registered nurse at the hospital. She helps people, which is the opposite of what she took part in the previous day. They both stayed inside Haley's house for the remainder of the weekend until they had to leave for work. The guilt and shame overwhelmed Ella as she helped her patients at the hospital. She tried her best not to think about the murder, but the memories flooded back like a hurricane. She broke down crying in a janitor's closet due to the immense feeling of pain in her heart, of regret. She thought about the man's family and if he had kids that would miss him. She took his presence and life away from them. She had no right. Even if he stalked and terrorized her, that was not an excuse to end his life. She was in distress and called her sister. She went into detail about how she was feeling, and her sister kept saying to hold it together and not say a word to anyone. So Ella wiped away her tears and pretended to be okay enough to not raise any questions for the rest of the day. At the end of the day, Ella went home and just sat with her many thoughts. Thoughts about confessing to the police about what they did, and thoughts about keeping this dark secret to herself. She's not sure what to do, but she knows she will have to live with the flashbacks and guilt for the rest of her life about what they did to James Brown. She decides to keep quiet for now because that's what her sister told her to do, although it will be hard and she doesn't know how much longer she can keep it inside. The next few days went by and police still didn't find James. Feelings were boiling inside Ella. Her sister suggested that they move out of town and start fresh. Ella considered it for a while, then she reluctantly agreed. So during the same month, they packed up their stuff, their belongings and pets, and went to look for another sweet home elsewhere. No one ever found James Brown, and Ella kept her secret.